Hey there, and welcome to Comedians on Technology, People, and Drugs. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have comedian Scott Manley Hadley with us. Hey, Scott, it's really great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So, I mean, it's pretty late on a Monday evening. I wouldn't be doing anything else. I'll
Uh,
be honest with you.
yes, we had a bit of a dance to sort that. We were almost thinking of doing a live recording yesterday, but I think this is probably the better way round. And now, Scott, you're a very funny person, and I think I think. Well, they always say that you should speak to the audience as if there was only a single audience member, and I think that's easy in our case because we only have a single audience member called Dan this week. I'm calling him Dan. I mean, he doesn't like he's actually called John, but let's call him Dan. And I think Dan is beside himself, wondering about your comedy origin story. Was it that you were a Klingon born to human parents on Earth, and that you joined the comedy Starfleet, and then had a series of television spots, in which you brought comedy to aliens to boldly go where no comic has gone before? How did it all kick off?
Um, I mean, that could have happened, and I could have memory banked that whole thing. I haven't done any proper regressive psychotherapy. I don't know what's buried in the subconscious. But generally, to be blunt and honest and direct, I used to do write a lot of poetry, write a lot of essays,
Hmm.
and had quite a bit published in like indie presses, indie literary magazines, things like that. But something I always enjoyed a lot was being funny. And then a few years ago, my partner became pregnant, and I thought I've always wanted to do performance, and if I don't try and do it now, I'll have an excuse to put it off indefinitely.
Mm.
At the end of that, so I started doing that at that point, and then I've maintained the practice. For yeah, coming up to a couple of years now, and I'm having a great time, having a great time, and trying to be very playful with what I do and testing new things, and I suppose yeah, seeing it as a creative outlet, and so focus more on the experimentation less than the rigor maybe. So I'm maybe not a very rigorous comedian. I'm not a do the same joke 500 times until it's polished like a diamond. I'm more a throw a lot of sequins at a wall and you get a nice little glitter, maybe. That's the way I aim, I suppose.
Brilliant, brilliant. Oh, wonderful. Well, man after my own heart. And well, it's interesting because you were just saying there, it's like, your partner got pregnant, and I thought you were going to say, I decided comedy was the way to really bring in the money. And so I felt I needed to provide a stable financial base for all around me. And so comedy, as we all know, just we're rolling in cash the whole time. They're just people
I mean,
throwing money.
compared to poetry, I think it
Oh.
is it is a little bit more expensive to do. Like you don't, I mean, you don't have to cover train fare to get your little poems published. It's
Ah.
adds up a little quicker, I suppose, on this side. But
Right.
you
Well,
also then get the immediate feedback of an audience, which is very different from writing in a magazine.
absolutely. Although, of course, some poets have been known to go out there and do poetry gigs, haven't they?
It's true, but they don't clap. They click their fingers, and it's
Oh,
oh
do they?
oh. If you're not up for that, you got to get out of it. I had to get out of it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
like being clicked at. I've done a lot of work in the hospitality sector. Being
Okay.
clicked at is not a pleasant thing.
Right. Interesting. I am learning volumes here. And but so fantastic. So you'd had interesting. So you'd been, I guess, then on the poetry side, more on the writing, and you like the writing and getting it published,
Hmm.
and the performance aspect of it was perhaps less the exciting thing. And but then pregnancy came in, and can you identify where the idea of doing stand-up comedy had come from? What was it that you sort of looked up to the people on television, or how did the idea enter your mind?
I mean, it was something that I'd long had an interest in. I've always yeah, watched a lot of recorded comedy. Watched a lot of comedy when I was younger, live comedy. It's something I've always had an interest in. I've always thought about doing, but
Hmm.
never really had a an impulse to do it. It was always something I thought I'll do that. I'll do that later. It's something to do later. It's not a rushed thing to do in a way that I suppose because there are more moving parts, then you can sit down and type something or write something by hand, and then that act is done. Whereas to perform something, there needs to be a room that it's being performed in. I mean, you can perform to a mirror, I suppose, but it's not quite the same.
I guess it
Um,
depends how much you like your reflection. I'm, it's but yeah, and so and I'm intrigued there. So one with comedy, I think for a lot of people, they sort of see it and think, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. And it sounds like you didn't, as in, I couldn't possibly do that in, oh, that would be so embarrassing. That would, but it sounds like
mhm.
that wasn't part of, you had done some performance in terms of like reading poetry, but found that was not your vibe. Um, I guess you'd done other performance sorts of things with music or theatre or
I mean,
something.
bits and when when I was a lot younger, like when I was a student, when I was at high school, like I did quite a bit of like amateur amdram at high school.
Yeah.
Like I did student pantomime, things like that. But then,
Mhm.
I stopped pretty abruptly for like, pretty much all of my 20s, most of my 30s, really, and then came back into it at an older age. So it was something I'd done a lot when younger, but never in a I'm not doing it in a professional way, but a slightly more. I'm kind of taking it more seriously, if that makes sense. Like I'm doing it regularly and thinking about what I'm doing, you know. So
Sure, sure, sure.
there's a
Yeah,
process to it in a way.
brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I guess partly I'm projecting that, as regular listeners of the postcard, regular listeners of the postcard, as regular listeners of the podcast. This is what comes from recording later in the day. Well, actually, I always talk strangely, but as regular listeners of the podcast will know, I mean, I had an early experience with stand up, like when I was sort of 21 or 22, and found it really, really hard and bombed, and just thought, wow, okay, this is super impossible, and like only special genius people can do it. And
Mhm.
actually, of course, and then there's other people who are sort of like very self-conscious, and any kind of performance, whether it was being in a play or doing stand-up, is anathema to them. But yeah, it sounds like you were generally interested in performance, and you had no particular reason to believe that stand-up comedy was more sufficient, hugely more or less difficult than ballet or music or any of these things. So it was just like, and you were
Yeah.
attracted to it, and it's like, yeah, I want to try that someday,
I
but
mean,
you're
I,
not in
I
a rush.
also knew a few friends that did it sort of at that kind of age, at like early 20s. And so
Okay,
there were a few times when I was in my early 20s when I went with a friend to go and do an open mic. So I mean, I was aware of how low how low the level can be. So I wasn't sort of intimidated to have a go, you know,
right,
because
right, yeah.
uh yeah, so I mean, I'd been to a comedy open mic night before I went to one to perform, so I knew that even if I'm really really shit, you know, I'm sure someone else will be just as bad, kind of thing. So it was
Mm.
um, yes, my experience wasn't just the Soho Theatre, like I'd seen some pretty rough stuff. I'd seen
Mm.
some pretty rough stuff.
Right, right. No, well, then that makes perfect sense. That then, in that context, it would seem like, oh yes, this is a thing that I will try at some point and
Hmm.
have a go at. I mean, it actually reminds me. I mean, when I around the time that I first tried stand up, or 30 odd years ago, and there were some friends who were doing it more regularly, and actually one who at least has carried on and become a professional comedian, and he's a very funny guy. And I remember being going to one of his gigs, and I think it was a sort of open mic, relatively small scale thing, and remember him being really funny for the first bit, and then he kind of like died on stage, and I felt very uncomfortable, and it was just sort of like I couldn't at the time, I couldn't understand how could it be that we've moved from this like joyous land of
Hmm.
hysterical giggles into now this period of difficulty. I just that was a sort of a seminal thing for me, thinking this is like I'll never be able to do this again. It's a total pipe dream. But he said, oh, I'm just sharing. But
But I mean,
that's
that's something that's quite interesting about it, right? I mean, that's sort of what I was kind of saying before about the feedback's immediate, right? So
it
if
is.
you're, but also, I think it's very interesting to see the ways in which people can hold an audience in a comedy space without being funny as well. So
Mm,
I think if you're skilled at it, you
mm,
could, that can mean two things, right? That can mean you're either every single sentence or even phrase you say is funny,
mm.
or you can build up for so long people are with you, sort of confident that
Mm,
there will be a payoff at the end.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, there are other approaches too, but I think it's yes, silence isn't necessarily failure, but sometimes it's absolute failure,
Yeah,
and
well,
that's
yes, yes, and of course, what's interesting is as well is that sometimes the different levels of failure for different people in the room. It's I don't know. I mean, this is I can't
Mhm.
trying to dissect this thing from like 30 years ago. Was it just me who was feeling terribly uncomfortable in the room, particularly because it was my friend on stage,
Mhm.
or was that the? I mean, who knows? But yeah, I kind of I really I'm really interested in what you're saying there about these ideas of holding an audience without being funny. And I mean, I do a lot of not being very funny and try to hold the audience and hug them, and like that's what the restraining orders are for. But I was going to ask you about that. Go back to the pregnancy, right? What was then I mean, did you do a comedy course? Did you just sign up for the nearest open mic? How
No,
did that
I did
all?
a course. I did the course at the Bill Murray,
Oh yeah.
which was very fun, and it was workshops, which is something
Mm.
that I was very familiar with from poetry stuff at sort of earlier points in my life.
Oh right.
So it was a situation that I was quite comfortable in, I suppose. Like we are sitting down and we are sharing the writing we've done, um, and we're talking about each other's work. So I
Mm.
found that I didn't find that very intimidating,
Mm.
whereas I think quite a lot of people in the sort of in the class did.
Mm.
And I think there were a few people who were doing it because they wanted to be more confident at public speaking
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
professional reasons. And there were some who thought they wanted to do comedy, but by the end of a few weeks of that, realized no, they don't want to do that at all. Um, and I think there were 12, 11 or 12 in the class. I think there's two or three that are still gigging like 2 years on. So it was not a high percentage of people that sort of gave it a go. There were a few actors as well who were just sort of doing it as a, adding string to the bow kind of training, which is yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, that sounds like the exact description of. So I did the Amused Mooses
Mhm.
course like coming up 5 years ago, and that was yeah the way what you just described would be like the exact thing, and that down to the a couple of actors, a couple of people trying to improve their speaking, the whole thing. It's remarkable. Fantastic. And so I assume that doing that course in which you felt quite comfortable, it came to the showcase show, and that went particularly well, particularly badly?
Yeah,
How?
no, it went very well. It was fun to do, nice to do, and then I just continued gigging regularly. Obviously I took a break when the baby was born,
Mm,
for a couple of months, and then have sort of been doing it regularly since then. Sort of once a week, twice, sometimes if I can squeeze it in around work, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, but yeah, keeping it as thinking of it as it's like exercise, right?
yeah.
You don't maintain your fitness unless you're doing the exercise kind of thing. Even if you're thinking about it isn't the same thing as doing it kind of thing. I think
Mm, mm,
stage performance is different from rehearsing. Like again, you can talking in the mirror is one thing, but
right.
it's a performance is a live thing rather than a recorded thing. In
Abs
my opinion.
I completely agree. Yes, it's well, and I'm just I'm very impressed that you doing that with a young family, and I often think like, oh, I wish I had kind of restarted earlier, and then I'm kind of like, oh, could I have done that with the kids, and would that fit in? And actually, we spoke recently to Gareth Beavis, who I think also has younger kids, and yeah, I mean, you've just got one at the moment, which I think is,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know, I mean, I that we accidentally had twins as our second and third child, and then we were sort of a bit overwhelmed. And yes, yes, I mean, when I look back at that period, I would have. Found it difficult to, but at the same time, actually, if I,
Mhm.
my partner did, I think when the kids were young, she would like, say, oh, I'd go off and do ultimate frisbee or other activities very occasionally, and that could have been at the time stand-up comedy. Anyway, the life is what it is. It's a universe hologram with, like, oh, I'm going nuts about this new thing I've read in a science magazine, but that's not, we're not yet at that part of the show. Um, I'm, yeah, really excited to hear about the process that you went through. And
I mean,
so
I think it's also my partner's an artist, like a visual artist as well. So there's very
mm,
much an internal culture within the home to make space for creativity
brilliant.
and for creative practice. It's probably the right phrase I need there. Yeah. So it's not a case of one person's doing all the doing all the boring stuff, one person's doing the fun stuff. I want to clarify
Oh,
that.
absolutely. Well, and that's wonderful to have that sort of creative understanding on both sides and to be making space for each other to do those to have creative outlets, and that's the way to stay sane. So that's I mean that's
Mhm.
wonderful. And I mean you come across as very confident. But was jumping from the course showcase to now open mics with total strangers a big deal? Were you very nervous in advance of some of those gigs, or it was just sort of actually this is all in my stride? I'm loving it.
Um, I mean, I think I think of myself as someone who isn't very confident. I think of myself as someone very shy, but I think I do a very good impression of not being that. I don't think
Right.
that's an impression that I give to other people.
Okay.
Um, um, so like I've been told I come across as rude sometimes,
Oh.
but that is a shyness rather than an
Mm.
intentional rudeness.
Mm.
But it I mean it doesn't really matter what the an aloofness, I suppose, is
Mm.
the is the way it can be experienced. But so yeah, I do feel a bit nervous sometimes, still at this point going to, but particularly sort of at the point now where I'm starting to do some more exciting
Mm.
gigs, sort of longer sets with
Sure.
um sort of more semi-professional on the bills kind of thing. And those I find very nervous,
Oh,
very
really?
nerve making
Mm.
um, but not but I don't feel that the performance doesn't necessarily feel more different.
Mm.
If anything, if there's more people in the room, it's kind of more relaxing almost in a way, because
Mm.
there's more space for things to work. Like a room of five people, if only one of them thinks you're funny, but that same percentage in a room of 100, that's
Mm.
that's a lot of people having fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just a sort of percentage rather than blunt numbers.
Yes. 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 And well, I mean, people often say that I come across as very confident on stage, and there's definitely a fair amount of anxiety going on under the hood in terms
Mhm.
of, oh, I don't know, it's going very well. Oh, but, when's the next laugh coming? But yeah, often, the I think I say maybe these are all characters that we're playing of sort of confident,
Mhm.
but it sounds like with you, and I think there's a certain sense with me where if there is any nervousness, we're not letting that stop us from actually performing. We're kind of
Yeah.
excited by the performing, and so we're carrying on doing it. I mean, we've talked a lot before about the previous episodes about gong shows, and I think how I struggle in gong shows due to I think when the sort of I love having a bigger audience when it's when they up the pressure with a competition and these sort of like dragging you off stage or what have you. It's at the moment that doesn't work so
Mhm.
so 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 well for me. But I'm interested for you then. You did the course and you liked it. Can you describe what it is now that's keeping you doing the like what is it that you're getting out of it that that's been different from other things that you've done that you haven't continued?
Um, I mean, I suppose there's a building that's continuing to happen. I mean, and with writing, right? Like I was published in magazines. I had a poetry collection published. I had an essay
Mm.
collection published. Do. There was sort of a movement to it, and I blog. Like I'm still writing. I still blog.
Oh
Very
yeah.
in a very 90s way.
Hmm.
I think I'm maybe the last person still with a WordPress page.
Right.
But I'm sort of enjoying building towards sculpting a show, finding ways to be more uh playful, more inventive with myself, pushing the limits of the stage persona I have and what I can do and can't do with that. I mean, I think, like you were saying, I come across as very confident, and something that I learned quite quickly was that I do come across as very confident.
Hmm.
And so material that relies on that not being the case is very difficult to do, especially in a short set. Like you can't build up the idea of I certainly can't at this point build up the idea of selfhood and um, perceptions being diametrically opposed in a 5 minute set that still manages to have a lot of jokes in. You know,
Hmm.
that's a big ask. Um,
Sure.
but it also it's I think it's also useful to have constraints in a way,
Hmm.
so that there are things you can't do for for reasons as they don't line up with the persona. I think
Mm.
it also gives the opportunity to at some point try and develop acting skills and try and
Hmm.
be look at character work, things like that. And um, I suppose what I'm enjoying about it is that I'm still doing different things with it. And every audience is different, every room is different.
Mm.
You can't. You can never stand in the same river twice, right? As
Right.
people
Right.
say. um, but yeah, the same jokes 10 times in 10 different contexts
Mm.
can be responded to completely differently. Um, and again, that
Absolutely.
feedback is very interesting to get that.
Yeah. Well, no, it sounds like, you're really enjoying the creative outlet and exploring it and doing the performance and so on. I'm particularly interested in that thing you mentioned about, how holding an audience without being funny, and the sort of build up and the different things. And it's so interesting. We were both at a gig last night, and it's just so interesting what different people find funny. And yeah, I was just sort of struck at one point by. I mean, there's also there's like your relationship with the comedian. It's almost like if you like the person, you end up being more generous with your laughter.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's even true, but I mean, I run a number of nights, and I'm often booking people, and sometimes there are people who like really really want to get booked, and they do make audiences laugh, but I don't necessarily want to hear them, or I don't necessarily appreciate their act so
Hmm.
much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tricky one, um, there, because you can sort of, in some cases, you'll like, oh yeah, that person. Yeah, certainly people were laughing, but it's weird with comedy because with music, if you like jazz, you're not expected to like rock and roll, right?
Hmm.
Whereas comedy kind of gets lumped into. I mean, there's a bit of this like dark comedy, alternative comedy. I guess
Yeah.
what we were at last night was an alternative comedy,
Hmm.
and so there was a bigger variation of or more interesting sort of different things going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I know what you mean though. Like, if you like comedy, you like all comedy. Is kind of a perception
Mm,
that's often had, right? But I don't. That's not the case at all, right? It's very there are very big differences between, um, the kind of comedians that sell out arenas
mm,
and the strange clown shows that that critically acclaimed, but 12 people in total watch kind of thing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's a whole gap in between that as well, sort
Yes.
of every stage on that scale. Um, no, I mean, I think people responding to laughter, the amount they laugh based on knowing people, I think is interesting. But I think kind of that's ultimately what charisma is
Mm,
getting people immediately into the space
mm.
where they do like you and are laughing for that reason, right? I think that's the goal ultimately is to have a stage presence that people want to um, respond at with laughter.
Yes, yes, and it's about these things, isn't it? It's about, in order for people to laugh, they need to feel relaxed. So
Hmm.
they need to feel like, one, this is somebody who's sort of knows what they're doing, that they're, like you. I mean, it's both of us projecting confidence, intentionally or otherwise.
Hmm.
Yeah, like if we seem calm and relaxed and confident, the audience can be calm and relaxed and confident, and then that facilitates the potential laughter and so on. It's yeah, yeah, it's funny. It's a funny old game, eh? This comedy. Um, but so maybe we can slide into the second question, which is how is technology affecting your life and comedy? And I often proviso this, if that's even an expression, by saying technology can apply to there's all kinds. There's pen and paper. There's stone tablets. There's latest
Mhm.
AI models. There's memory palace. Like mnemonics for remembering your set. Any of these things, and the whole thing. Although I am very interested in any technology that you're using, it's sort of a thinly veiled subterfuge because I'm really interested in like how you manage your life and how you develop your comedy, how you come up with ideas, that whole comedy process. So yeah, are you a big tech head? Are you using it, or is it all stone tablets all the way down?
Um, to be honest, I don't really record things I'm working on until I've finished them. The
Okay.
way I've sort of written comedy, which is very different from how I've ever written um, anything before, is I've particularly while walking a dog usually, is I will walk around the circuit of a park and I will monologue at myself
Oh yeah.
in 2 to 8 minute loops until I get to where I want. And that's sort of what I found to be the most effective way for me. So because it's a comedy as a spoken medium, I try
Mm.
to write it in speech
Uh-huh.
rather than sit down and type it out and then see if it works
Oh yeah.
aloud.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose so. In a way, I'm trying to remove that. Like again, like the best place for me for writing is the shower. I write a lot of jokes in the shower,
Mm-hmm.
and try and remember to like maybe a voice note is a useful thing to do,
Right.
or write it down if it's a short thing. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, for when I've been happiest with the moments of process I've had, it's when I've done a circuit around a park once or twice and honed something in. And I've done
Brilliant.
I've done that if there's been a few times where I've done that with 5 minutes of completely new stuff. It starts off as 20 minutes. I walk around the park, it gets tighter and tighter and closer, and then I've got something that's ready to go. Um,
No, fascinating. And
but my dog's getting pretty old. He's getting slower, so he's not very
it,
it's
it's
it's the
it,
movement. The movement helps. It's the having to stop, pause, stops the process. So
it,
he's not on my side anymore.
and he's clearly laughing so much that it's affecting his ability to he's aging more quickly from the spasms of laughter that he's having as a
I
result
mean,
of.
he's still heckling. He's still heckling. I
Yeah.
thought he was in the room. He's not. Don't know where he is.
Yeah, well,
Um,
vanishing dog. And but that's I'm really interested, and that so that when you're doing that, you're not recording yourself walking around the park. You're like on a voice note, like, and then playing it back. You're just sort of going through the set,
mhm.
so to speak, and then carrying on walking. This moment stop, and then now, okay, now I'm going to start that from the beginning again. And so
Yeah,
it's kind of it's kind of on repeat. You sort of getting the kind of flow of
exactly.
where
And
it's
then and
going to.
then probably if when I've got something I'm happy with, then a voice note, and then
Right.
come back to that to start. But
Interesting.
ideally, not listen back to it unless I need to.
Right.
Would be
Right.
the voice note is a backup recording. The
Right.
the real recording is the
Is that the and then
is
the
up there,
would the voice note
or
be.
in there, or in the heart,
Oh
maybe.
well, or in lower down. But the voice note is. I'm interested there in like would the voice note be the recording of the full thing just as a backup, or would it just be like two words that are like the kind of bullet point of this is the thing.
I mean, it would probably be the full thing. Yeah,
Okay.
when I've done it,
Yeah.
when
Right.
when
Okay.
when I've had those perfect hour or 90 minutes of process to do that. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's.
Right. Right. Fascinating. And then you would take that on stage as a five or a seven or what have you,
Mhm.
and see how it went. And would you record yourself while you were? I mean, I think I saw you recording yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try and record. So, I mean, to be honest, I broke my phone in April, May last year, and
Uh,
had a very, very basic phone for the last 9 months. I recently got a new phone,
mm, mm,
so it is nice to be able to have video again.
great.
So yes, but I think it is useful. I think it is super useful to record stuff.
Yeah.
Um, just to look back over it, to check how things went. I think it's also very easy to again, depending on confidence levels
Hmm.
and comfort levels and how familiar sort of the particular lines you're using in a set are, it's very easy to misremember audience reactions. If
Mm.
like I've definitely felt like gigs went very badly and
Mm.
listened to a recording and thought, oh no, people are laughing all the way through. Why did I?
Mm.
There's maybe it's lighter or there are some jokes that don't quite land, but it's not. It's easy to, and vice versa. Sometimes
Right.
you can think that was the best set I've ever done.
Right.
I'll start sending that to promoters, and then it's actually kind of silent. I was just in a very good mood.
Yes,
So I mean, yeah, it's interesting, to see that.
yeah, I think that's a common experience. I think it's quite a leveler. I mean, some people really, really don't like watching or listening to themselves back. But I think, I think the received wisdom is do it. It's definitely a great leveler, and I think absolutely
Mhm.
for. I mean, just on was it Thursday this week? Oh, it was I think it was Thursday. Yeah, I mean, and I'd done a part of my show, and like there was one bit where I thought that the Joker's done okay. I think in some rooms in the past, maybe I was deluding myself. But so it didn't get very much, and listening back, it was like that, and it sort of spurred me to write a new joke there, which I tried out on Saturday and then on Sunday as well, and seems to be going a little bit better, and we'll
Mhm.
see. And I think part of as I say, like watching it back, it's kind of like in the heat of the moment of the gig, it's quite difficult to kind of like like you're just, I don't know about you. I'm often find I'm a bit, like lightheaded after a set, and
Mhm.
I find an hour or whatever after a show, and I watch it back. That's a point at which I can then kind of like say, oh, okay, maybe this bit needs to change, and that's the impulse to then change it. Is I
Mhm.
find that quite useful
Yeah.
in that way.
Exactly. I'm sure you've seen people go on stage with a notebook and just cross stuff out,
Mm.
tick cross as they go through a set. And yeah, as an audience member, I don't like that. It just
Mm.
feels you feel like you're being used, rather rather than it's too transactional.
Right, right. Well, and you mentioned that you're like not one of these comics who polishes the same joke over and over and over again, hundreds, thousands of times into a diamond and so on. You're more throwing sequins at a wall, and that's I'm really
I mean, that's
excited
what I'd
about that.
like to. That's what I aspire to. That's what I
Oh, okay.
aspire to for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's yeah, I mean the thing I don't have as much time as I'd like for is the writing at this point.
Okay.
Um, so I think it's that I would love to do something new, 100% new every single time.
Mm.
But that's hard, even
Yeah.
because yeah, I'm not I wouldn't think I'm not an improviser, if that
Mm.
makes sense. As much as I try and write vocally,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I don't write the perfect 7 minute set the first 7 minutes I speak. And
Mm.
it's not, and that's not what I'd aspire to. As a writer, as like a poet and an essayist, I would
Mm.
always, I will always overwrite and then
Okay.
cut down, and that's sort of the way I've always written things.
Mm.
Is seeing editing as sculpting.
Mm.
Would be the first draft is the raw material rather than whatever happens before that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, and very poetic. It's almost as if you had a poetry background. Um, yeah, it's well, because as I flip backwards and forwards, there's clearly something that can evolve when one does repeat the same material over and over again. You
mhm.
find new tags, you become more confident with it. It creates space for you to focus on other things. At the same time, I'm fascinated by the comedians like Ross Noble who do, whole shows, Rory Scovel in the US, that are just sort of made up riffing. And then, of course,
Hmm.
all professional comedians have a degree of riffing, and just sort of playing in the moment. There's something very exciting about that. And you may know I do this, as I've mentioned on the podcast, this virtual reality comedy booby trap, which is currently, twice a week. And it's basically five new thoughts every time. And it's the kind of thing that I think wouldn't be supported in the open mic rooms that we're in. Like, I basically just wouldn't get booked with anything like the frequency that I wanted if I was doing that. But we've got this weird setup in virtual reality that there's this sort of, between 6 and 12 people, 12 if I'm lucky, more likely six or down to four. People will hang out in this virtual reality bar while I'm just talking total bollocks. And I've done like 287
Oh
of these
wow.
now. And they're like all between half an hour and 45 minutes. And there are different five thoughts. And there are certain things that have become structured stuff that I do, it's almost like a bit like a game showy sort of thing, like
Hmm.
the regular, the speed round that I do in the middle and this, that, and the other. But yeah, on Saturday, I had a particularly good one. I mean, sometimes I do them and I'm like, oh gosh. I mean, I listen back and it's, oh. But on Saturday, there was a couple of new people in who'd never been before who seemed to find it particularly funny. And
Hmm.
just, when you've got, some, and maybe they were probably on some kind of drugs. I mean, but when you can kind of get into that zone and then you're relaxed and then you can just play in the
Hmm.
space of ideas and just be, yeah, there's something really, and I think for me, my goal is to be able to get to the level where I can I can do that playing, completely relaxed playing in the space of ideas in any context. But saying that, I mean, at the moment I'm working on my show, and it is going to, absolutely, it's not improvised. It's a planned
Hmm.
show. There's bits that I'm tweaking, and so on. But yeah, I think the trick for me has been now is like I'm not rehearsing it, because what I used to do before a gig when I was first starting out, the first 100 or so, is like, oh, lunchtime I'd like walk over the Thames backwards and forwards, and I'd be like having the kind of like my 5 minute set in a loop on my
Hmm.
head, and I think through doing that I would get completely sick of the same thing. Whereas I'm
Hmm.
sort of very carefully only doing my show or bits of my show at a relatively low frequency, and that kind of allows me to like sort of not get sick of it. But it sounds like for you actually the repeating of it, that's a part of the process that you enjoy. There's a kind of like a crafting thing, like you're saying with the sculpting, that
Yeah.
actually kind of rings your bell, which seems like a brilliant place to be.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think I was when I started, I was worried about being able to memorize stuff,
Mm,
which hasn't ever been a problem.
mm,
But I think I think maybe that was like a preemptive act because I was worried I'd struggle to remember things.
mm.
I'd set my process up to bake in the impossibility of that.
Right.
Um, perhaps, but I mean, I think I mean, obviously, yeah, the repetition is important, right? I think that is how stuff gets shined up, um, which is interesting in itself, really, because it's never nothing's ever really finished in a way, right? With a
Mm,
joke, there's always a an idea that it could possibly be improved, and that's the thing I like, right? The
mm,
idea that shows are always in flux, that
mm-hmm,
there is not a script, even if there is pretty much a script, it's ultimately more of a score.
mm-hmm,
There's always
mm,
space for there should
mm.
always be space for something in the room to affect that.
Yeah.
Um, which is interesting and makes comedy different from other performance styles, right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
like if every single night in the West End Les Mis was kind of different, it wouldn't still be running. Or maybe it would. I don't know. Maybe
Well,
that's
it's a really interesting one because I always remember this is Amdram myself back at university, and I remember saying why I was saying this or I just heard this from somewhere else or that I sort of certainly believed it at the time, and I think it's got some truth in it. Is that one of the big differences between, I mean, DVDs, you don't have DVDs anymore, like a show that you watch, and like for example, I'm watching Mock the Week, and if I rewatch the same show, it's going to be exactly that. My reaction to it might be slightly different. I'm getting bored of
Hmm.
rewatching it, or what have you, but my behavior is in no way going to influence the content of the show.
Hmm.
Whereas if I'm at a live performance, then potentially, how hard I'm laughing or what I do can have an impact. And I think that also applies to, like for example, a theatre production where, okay, they've got a script, but the kind of if in those moments of high tension, for example, the audience is gasping or laughing in the comedy moments
Hmm.
or what have you. I think that the actors and actresses, or do we just say actors now? I'm not sure. I'm so old. On stage, they react to that. They take like if
Hmm.
they're sensing that the audience is going with them on the journey that they're putting together for this story, that kind of heightened, and then there's sort of like this. I think there can be a feedback loop there, which can you
Hmm.
can have wonderful experience going to the theater when that happens. And I think with comedy, there's kind of like more license for it to change. And so when it goes well, it can go really, really well. Of course, the way it could
Yeah.
go badly, you could have a negative and it could go really badly. But yes, yes, wonderful. Mm. And I was going to segue there because I've kind of lost my thread, and I was remember you are also a bit musical, are you not?
Um, the way I would phrase it is I don't play a guitar, I play with a guitar.
Right.
So I don't think of myself as very musical. But it's something I like to do.
Yes. Well, and I very much enjoyed your set last night was three songs, and you had
Hmm.
technology in that you had electric guitar and it was attached to a amplification device on your
Yeah,
belt,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah, I mean that's it's a whole nother side to things, and I mean I guess you're not coming up with little tunes on the way around the park, or maybe you are. I just wondered how the that
No, I mean that mainly is singing for my child. So is why
uh,
I play like when I was a teenager, like many teenagers from a small town. I spent a lot of time playing guitar as a teenager, and
mm,
I've always, as I've lived in many places, always carried the biggest item I've always brought with me is my guitar.
mm.
But then when I had a child and spent more time sitting in the house one on one with a toddler, I was like, oh, I'll get that dusty box out,
uh,
um, and um, and that's why I've sort of spent more time doing that the last year or so. And it's been nice. I've enjoyed it a lot. But it's something I've always taken pleasure in. Um, and so it's nice to be able to bring that um, into the performance, I suppose. But yes,
Right.
usually something that I've done in private, or on the internet, but not in performance settings really.
Yeah. Well, what the sense that I'm getting is that you're not, for example, committed like I will be a musical comedian. You're committed to kind of exploring the creative space, and so whether that's
Hmm.
with interesting costumes or musical instruments or ideas or what have you, you're like playing with the idea of the performance to see what fun you can have.
Exactly. That's it.
Brilliant.
That's
Job
exactly
done.
it.
Case closed. I think
Yeah.
therapy session over. No. Uh,
But yeah, I think what's important for me is that aspect of play, is that I want to feel like I'm playing while creating. And I did do some before I started doing stand-up comedy. I did some improv classes, so I
hmm.
thought I might enjoy that.
Hmm.
And I really love the element of play to it, but I've felt frustrated by the lack of um the lack of I suppose craft to it. There's not
Hmm.
you're not coming back to the same because I'm a
Hmm.
poet. I'm interested in language. I'm
Hmm.
interested in
Hmm.
in in how things are expressed.
Hmm.
Um, and finding the best ways to express something.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that the most immediate or the funniest way to express something isn't necessarily the best way to express it. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, for me, that felt like a bit of a dead end
Hmm.
because the the play is important, but the play is kind of the center. Like
Right.
you're not moving towards a um once it's done, right? It is ephemeral. And obviously I
Hmm.
think some things should be ephemeral. I think it's good to have
Uh-huh.
ephemeral things in one's life.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I'm interested in a creative and a performance practice, I
Uh.
suppose. And yeah, and that's why I wanted to write slash rehearse some things into what I say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like as adults, it's often very difficult to play. We have to
Hmm.
be serious and so on, and take the world seriously and what have you. But like that playfulness, is a beautiful thing, and it requires kind of like safety, and it's wonderful if we can have safe spaces where we can play and explore ideas. It's really interesting what you're saying about improv, which I have done bits and pieces of, and I think I feel like there is a I know what you mean. Um, I think there is a kind of like a meta level craft there where
Oh yeah, yeah, no, of course. I'm not
yeah,
being dismissive
which
of it as
I
a
no
form
no
at
no,
all. Yeah.
I didn't think of you as dismissing it. It was and I think similarly for me, while there's a lot going there. I mean, I'm kind of like, who are these other people on stage when it's my stage time? I really should be I rather like do improv with the audience, and then the audience is there, and it's clear. Or at least in VR, the thing in VR,
Mhm.
they don't really realize that they're an audience so much, and so often they'll do a lot of speaking, and I have to tell them about that. But anyway, yes, it's yeah.
I,
Go on.
I was going a key difference for me is the difference between audience and spectator.
Mm,
And I suppose that's where that barrier blurs
mm,
with something like improv because it's playing in the way that like improv and wrestling, I would say, are probably similarly on similar points in between audience and spectatorship.
oh, really? Interesting.
Whereas, um, yeah, so there's that what's happening is spontaneous to a point,
Hmm.
but it's also I don't know. I don't exactly. I don't know where this ends as an image, but yeah, like I find watching sport very boring, for example,
Right.
and that's what I mean about spectatorship. You know,
Mm.
it's like I don't I think it's fun to play, but I don't
Mm.
necessarily think I don't enjoy as much watching other people play.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I, right. Yes. So that's a really interesting analogy that you're saying. Where does it end? I think basically with having, I was imagining a group of wrestlers beating up a load of improv people, which would be nice. But but it is because I mean I was always much more interested in playing sport. I mean, not that I was very sporty, but more interested in playing it than watching it.
Mhm.
And then I did go through a phase of kind of getting into watching it, and then I was like, no, 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 now it's dead, and I've cut that out, and I don't do it anymore. And it's just that was a weird period of my life. But you know, but you mentioning sports as yes, a spectator versus audience. I mean, that one of the really that some people seem to really be passionate about watching sport, and they talk about the experience that they have watching it, with a whole crowd of other people and the sort of
Mhm.
like ripples of emotion that go through the crowd. And when I've been in crowds of people watching sport, I've just not really felt anything. I don't know if that's just like I don't have the, or you and I don't have the right, whatever it is that we have to connect with that. Maybe we're too intelligent. No, that sounds wrong, doesn't it? But or is it just that you need to somehow unlock the passion for a particular team, and then once you're in with a group who everybody's all similarly passionate, then you're I don't know, but
I think it must be that. You know, like I've tried. Like I've been to a lot of different sport because I am interested in spectacle and
yeah,
performance.
right,
But yeah, it's just I don't care what happens. You know, it's
yeah,
like I'm not emotionally invested. Where's the backstory? Why does
right,
it, I loved challenges. I loved heated rivalry. I loved uncut gems. Put some sports in a drama. I'll have a great time.
right.
But yeah, I didn't watch challenges and start watching tennis. I'm not gonna start watching ice hockey after heated rivalry. It's
Uh, It's well,
That's
and everybody, everybody enjoys different things, and it's great that we're finding the things that we love. I saw an improv show being recorded for Channel 4 at the Backyard the other week, and they were actually. I was like, wow, these people are really good, and it was really funny, and well done them. And I was sort of almost it was making me improv curious again, but yeah. Anyway, I say really improv, but it's all about me. Shall we move on to our third question, which is about which people have had the biggest impact on your life and comedy? And sometimes this gets answered, implicitly as we go along. But yeah, this is, people, like famous comedians or not so famous comedians that you perhaps have been influenced by people in your life. You were mentioned, your partner and how you're both supporting each other.
Mhm.
Like to have creative outlets as you're raising a family, which is wonderful. But yeah, who are any people you'd like to shout out to as really having influenced you or your comedy?
Um, in terms of comedy, I think that um, I don't think what I do is like this, but I my absolute favorite type of thing is where things really go to extremes.
Oh, okay.
Um, Sort of where sort of performance art meets comedy. Like
Mm,
the Kim Noble is my absolute favorite. Like I will
okay.
watch anything Kim Noble does.
Right.
Um, like taxidermy and video integrations with show and huge theatricality. I think that's super interesting and super exciting. But obviously operating with complex and very long rehearsal and editing space and complexity that is not what I have the capacity to do.
Mm,
Um, but in a dream world, I'd love to be more complicated um, performatively. Um, I mean, something I Lucy McCormack is someone else I really like who sort of does
mm,
similar extreme performances, extreme, I don't know, in inverted commas maybe, but sort of pushing the limits of what you can
right.
do in a space with an audience.
Mm,
Um, but sort of at the very opposite end, I also really like things that are very quiet and very understated.
mm.
And I think when I saw, I don't know if you know the comedian Ed Axel,
I'm not sure that I do. Yeah, go on.
who is an anti-comedian, like is
Oh,
the
right.
term that's often used. And his shows he doesn't really tell any jokes at all. He just
Bit like me.
mumbles.
Yeah.
But
Again, very
he just
similar.
sort of mumbles for an hour, and that's it. And it's almost they almost sort of feel like a durational piece. Like
Right.
I've seen several of his shows, and I don't think the first few times there were always walkouts. Is
Right.
this all this is? Yes, this is all this is. It's a strange man mumbling through an hour, and it's great, and I absolutely love it. And
Wow.
and he can without being it's kind of an anti-charisma too. Like he's not holding the audience because he's beautiful and charming. It's the space and the setup of a performance focuses an attention that he's able to maintain by constantly subverting it essentially. I
Right.
mean, maybe I'm overselling it, but I've really enjoyed his stuff, and I think what that sort of has often made me think about, and again, his work was someone I saw him a lot, probably about a decade ago at this point,
Mm,
um, and that just sort of that was something else that was in my mind when I started doing comedy. Is you if you know what you're doing,
mm,
you can kind of get away with doing anything in a comedy space. And I think we kind of were touching on this earlier, right? And it's not necessarily the presentation of confidence, it's the implication of the confidence that I think
mm,
people respond to. And I think comedy audiences are not necessarily the audiences of every comedy show, but comedy audiences, people who are savvy with what comedy can be and give the benefit of the doubt, at least to begin with, to a performer. Anything, I mean, pretty much anything in the wrong space can create humor.
Mm.
Anything on something unexpected, something,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
that can be, I don't know. I mean, the obvious sort of examples are prop comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Is something unexpected in a strange place.
Right.
But I do think that comedy is such a wide canvas
Mm-hmm.
that there are so many ways that people can do things that are funny. Someone can, I've seen very traditional stand-up acts um, who are great, and it's people performing comedy in a style that's how comedy's been performed since the 50s or
Right.
60s. But
Right.
if someone doing that well, it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's not like the only things that are funny are things that are fresh and new. There are things that work. There are
Yeah.
Some Like It Hot is very very funny.
Mm.
Comedy films from almost a century ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Still hit those beats. The mechanicals in Midsummer Night's Dream. There are great jokes in there. Chaucer.
Mm-hmm.
That's even earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's that. What's the ancient Sumerian pub joke? A dog walked into a
To it.
bar.
Right.
It's something like that, right? I'll
The,
have that one.
the, yeah,
It's weird, right?
it's one where apparently there's a pun in that language that we don't get.
Yeah.
Is what? Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but things can continue to be funny when because of the way they're structured. But I think that's what's interesting about comedy is a joke can work hundreds, thousands of years later,
Right.
but again, it depends on because it's creating its own context
Right.
um, in that sort of setting, I think. Um, so I don't know. I'm worried that I'm building towards a lack of a conclusion with this
I
with
mean,
this point.
I was really excited, and well, they say it's all about the journey, and I was, to be honest, I hadn't heard of Kim Noble, Lucy McCormick, or Ed Axel, and I was just bringing up images of them to get a sort of feel because I was excited
Mhm.
about the way you were describing the different kinds of things that they were doing, and uh, yes, it's like you were saying anything in the wrong space can create humor, and I feel like I had this little mini comedy epiphany in the last few days of, as I think I was talking about on stage last night, kind of part of the trick, or one, there are many modes of comedy, but just talking about what is happening right now, and particularly if it's a thing that everybody can see, but
Mhm.
they haven't necessarily commented on, is kind of like it's almost like turning your brain inside out on things that are, other people are able to connect with. Um, and it's sort of like, yeah, it's like the thing that you shouldn't be saying, the elephant in the room. You kind
Mhm.
of put that out, and then people sort of, what is it? It's like embarrassment leads to kind of like leads to a laugh. Yeah, yeah, and there are definitely underlying themes running through it. I mean, I really like what you're saying about the idea that the jokes can work hundreds of thousands of years later. I think for those all of those really ancient ones on clay tablets, I don't know that any of them have actually managed to make people laugh. But certainly Chaucer, yeah, and that's a good
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
years ago, isn't it? So give or take. Yeah, brilliant. Yes, well, that was thanks so much for listing all of those exciting comedians who I'll be checking
Yeah,
out
do
now.
check out the Summeranians. They're
Oh yes,
hot
yes.
stuff.
Dozer, I believe, one of the gods of the yeah, appears as a dog in various movies for some reason. But yeah, yeah, and well, brilliant. I mean, like I guess well, time's rushing on. I could go to the next question. Is there anybody else like that was wonderful talk about some of these the lights of the comedy firmament who are inspiring you. Was there anybody closer to home that you wanted to shout out? Your relatives, friends, people who said you could do performance, you should try it out, or is it all
Um,
you? Basically, everybody said you couldn't do it, and you've proved them wrong.
no, no, no. I mean, I think I think no, no, nobody's been too dismissive of me, but I mean, I think I do see the comedy that I'm doing as a continuation of my poetic and
Right.
essayistic practice in a way. But I mean, it's hitting different receptors, I
Hmm.
suppose. Um, but yes, many people have been very supportive. Um, but I think yeah, it is all it is at the end of the day. It's just it's a decision that I've made to
Yeah, good,
do
good,
and have continued to execute it, I think. But that's yeah,
brilliant,
that's the thing that I'm pleased with myself for having begun to do this. I'm
br-
happy that I've done it.
brilliant,
Um,
brilliant. Yeah, no, that's
but not
great.
in an arrogant way.
No,
Just
no, 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 in a very friendly, confident, and loving way. Yeah, no, brilliant. Um, I'm wrestling with a kind of insight that I've just had that's like apropos of nothing about. I find like I was just talking about different kinds of comedians. I think I struggled on my side with the comedians who allow long periods of silence and like long build-ups in that I'm just my act in contrast is like basically I'm just talking continuously, which I'm sure some
Mhm.
people absolutely hate, but I think it's this kind of it's a reflection of the kind of like for me there's this constant mental noise, and it's kind of like I mean I do meditation, but it's like if somebody's like doing something very slowly on stage and building up stuff, I kind of want to switch off.
Mhm.
I'm just having an insight there. It is kind of tangentially related to stuff we're talking about. So, sorry, I was thinking I shouldn't say that, and I should move on to the next question. I have now said it. I think I will probably move on to the next question because it doesn't really take us anywhere. Apologies.
Well, no, I don't know. I think it's interesting though. I think it's important to also know what you like and what you don't like in
Right,
comedy as well, right? I think if comedy is something you're doing, you need to why are you doing the comedy you're doing? It's because I like the comedy that I'm doing, right? You want to think that you're funny. If you love fast-paced puns, but you do slapstick,
right,
you're not going to be very happy with yourself, right? At the end of the
right,
day.
right. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, and then that's to be fair to our, slower talking comedian friends, of which there are many. Some people, sort of deadpan. I think for me, as I said to Stuart Lee, because I was at his show, and he was asking why I didn't seem to enjoy his slapstick bit. I said I preferred the cerebral stuff because I'm a big, I think, yeah, clowning can be great, but it's not. I don't want to pay to see it. Anyway, let's move on to our fourth question, our penultimate question. How do drugs affect your perception of reality? And as always, when I say drugs, I mean any substance, and that could be caffeine, it could be nicotine, it could be chocolate. It could be, crack cocaine. It could be anti ADHD medication, anti-anxiety drugs. And obviously only share as much as you're willing to share. It's you know it could be some people's hallucinogens or smoking dope has sometimes really affected some people's
Mhm.
perception of reality. Some people, antidepressants have helped them get through a really difficult time. Some people can't make it through the day without chocolate. um are substances a big part of your life, and if they are, do they affect your perception of reality?
Um, I mean, I have to say at this point in my life, substances aren't a very significant thing for me at the moment. But I mean,
No.
I've had some rough patches.
Mm.
I've had self-medication, medical medication. I've tried many different things.
Mm.
But I think from what I've personally found most useful is is looking at causes rather than
Mm.
effects.
Mm-hmm.
And the times when I've been struggling and um, responding in short-termist ways to that, shall we say,
Mm.
um, the ways I've not been in situations like that more recently is by having very different surrounding circumstances. So I don't know. But at the same time, I don't um but like in the past I've been prescribed very very strong medication to the point where I'm not on any medication psychiatrically
Mm-hmm.
or any other medication for any other reason at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be very wary to do it again
Mm.
because I found rather than um the things that were sharpened and the things that were were eased away were
Mm.
also the bits that were most useful for me for expression.
Mm.
So I lacked not only the ability to express and the misery to express, um, but also any interest in trying
But really.
to do so.
Mm.
Um, and so I found um, it's in some ways I was more stable, but less
Mm.
interested in myself and less
Mm.
interested in the world, and
Mm.
yeah, less unhappy, but also less um, the lowest lows were removed, but so were the joyfulest joys,
Mm-hmm.
and that didn't feel for me in the end like it was worth doing.
Mm.
Um, but I do worry that I sometimes, when talking about this, sound very
Mm.
anti-medication, which I don't want to do. I don't think that my experiences are necessarily. I don't extrapolate them for everyone else's. I'm not trying to push that. I think I was probably over medicated,
Mm.
and so I'm perhaps reacting to that. But maybe I wasn't. Maybe that was what I needed to to survive at that point in my life. Maybe the doctors did know best, and I wouldn't be here talking to you if they hadn't
Mm.
given me that stuff. Um, so yes, I think that there's a lot of life is a learning curve, isn't it?
I
It's the
hear. Yeah.
journey, and I think it's the things that happen, the things that have happened, right? And you can't change the past. And I think for
I've
me, it's
heard
very
that.
important that I try not to dwell. I try not to be bitter or too regretful. One
Mm.
of my books is called The Pleasure of Regret, and I
Ah,
suppose I kind of wrote that to kind of write myself out of the tendency to do that, to
right.
romanticize one's own
Uh-huh.
miseries.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, so now I just make a lot of jokes. But I mean, I'd like there to be um, heft too in the comedy that I do.
Great, mate.
Um,
It's almost like you were an essayist who did poetry and stuff. These words you're with. Oh,
but
what? Goodness me. Heft. Oh.
but yes, so I think a clear-sightedness is helpful for me. But I mean, I drink too much coffee. I
You're in good company with Callum McKenzie. That's his tipple. I'm not. I gave up uh, caffeine for 3 years, and I'm slowly letting it back into my life. Yeah.
And how's that going?
Um. Not too badly. There was one day when it went a bit nuts, and I had to roll back. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm trying to be less absolutist about the things that I basically had about 3.5 years where I gave up all coffee and alcohol.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm now kind of allowing myself, yeah, so far, so good, shall we say. Yeah, yeah. But thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts there, which are fantastic. And of course, as you were saying, and as we often say on the podcast, the way any substance, be it caffeine or heroin or antidepressants or whatever they happen to be, how that affects every person is different. And
Hmm.
yeah, like we're just talking about the experiences that we had in our lives. And yeah, people should not take that as like, oh right, yes, oh I will do, make judgments off that. Yeah,
I
and
mean, if you're getting your medical advice from comedy podcast,
you kind of, I mean, yeah, that's
slippery slope. I mean, you're a long way down a slippery slope, I think, by that point,
yes,
right?
yes. I mean,
Or
hopefully,
not. Maybe that is what it's for. I don't know.
yeah. Or well, maybe, or hopefully, my public liability insurance has come through, and I won't get in trouble. Uh, yeah, yeah. And so these days, there's the coffee. Are there other? I mean, we've had a couple of people recently. Who was it? I think both Willow Marler and Sangdon Park talking about fast food as being a kind of like a real thing for
Hmm.
them. Yeah, yeah. You're a big coffee fan, and any other sort of
I mean,
special pleasures?
I have a drink once or twice a week, but that's
Yeah,
not a
someone can do.
not binge drinking these days.
No.
So with I mean with the tot, it's just I think I've had a hangover once since I had a baby, and it was impossible.
No, that it's
So
really
it's not worth it, not worth
babies really take the fun out of a hangover. It's just,
it.
think about how much fun a hangover is and just like remove all yeah, yeah, good show. Well, it's so great talking to you, Scott. This brings us, I think, to our final question, which is what does it all mean? This life, this universe, this everything. Some people say that's the big question. It's really difficult. I mean, I think if you want to address the big question full on, absolutely. But it doesn't have to be the biggest question. It could just be, what does life mean to you? Answer it in any way that you see fit. And it's a no judgment zone. I'm like, I've just been reading today about Stephen Hawking's theory that turns out that maybe the entire universe is a hologram, and that like we're basically it's a projection from like a sort of a lower dimensional surface onto a large, so that basically all time exists at all time, and kind of that sort of implies that there's no free will, and it's just one big crystal we're sort of like flowing through. And I'm just fascinated by these things, but also what drives people, what gets them up out of bed, why they keep doing what they're doing. Yeah. So what do you think, Scott?
I mean that's it is a big question, even if you take it into smaller chunks, right? I
Mm.
think um but yes, I mean as I alluded to, I've had some very dark times
Mm.
before in my life where I would have been very happy to have not got up in the morning.
Mm.
And I think um I suppose for me the purpose, the meaning is to have enough meaning to not feel like that.
Mm.
You know, to have to not fall into the holes, you know, to not be overwhelmed with worry and anxiety
Mm.
and misery, and to pay attention to what could make that happen again and make sure it doesn't. I think
Mm.
so. I'm very. I try to be very conscious of what I need to not. I mean, fall apart is an exaggeration at this point, but I think I knowing what one values and
Mm.
trying to avoid putting your values in confrontation either with other people or with other situations,
Right.
I think. And I think, yeah, the times when I've been most unhappy have been when I've been in places where my values do not align with my surroundings or um, peer or employment spaces,
Mm.
and knowing that that's important for me at this point is useful. For me, more generally, I mean, I think most people it's probably just having a good time all the time, right?
What?
That's
What?
the purpose, you know.
Uh-huh.
But I mean,
Yeah.
which is kind of what I'm saying, you know, is have a good enough time,
Yeah.
enough of the time. And that's what I aim for. A good enough time, enough of the time. And I think actually more generally, I think enough is important. Things should be
Mm.
good enough. Things don't have to be good, they have to be good enough, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And what that is different for different people, I think. Um,
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. And I really like you saying about the arranging circumstances. I think you said earlier, in terms of, yeah, like you actually these days you prefer to change circumstances to try and, arrange things such that you can feel good. Like you were saying, like if you're
mhm,
having a struggle, you know, the kind of approach that you were saying is like, yeah, like rather than doing something short term that that so I'm, kind of ignoring that struggle or being
mhm.
distracted from the struggle, it's like, okay, let's see if we can adjust the circumstances. And I think that aligns what you were saying there about, okay, sometimes my values were not in, not going with the grain of the broader circumstance, and so that, links into, an effective approach being change the circumstances.
I
Yeah.
think so. I mean, I think so. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, see how I'm doing in a couple of years. But yeah, I'm all right. I'm okay-ish. I'm
Yeah.
okay-ish. You
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, I mean,
And
good
that's
enough.
good enough.
That's good
That's good
enough. It's
enough.
good enough. I
Okay-ish
mean, if
is
you're
good
trying to
enough.
be, perfect or just super good, yeah, no, good enough. Good. Well, there's that whole, I think, the thing of good enough parenting is a movement that I think
Hmm.
is important, that we don't hold ourselves to quite too high standards. Shoot for the stars, but don't beat yourself up if you're not getting there. And is there, just out of interest, do you have um any kind of like religious background or philosophical background that informs the bigger picture at all?
No, no,
Uh,
not really. I mean, um, I suppose I find it interesting. I sort of the w- I do sometimes find myself feeling a bit envious, right, of people with that kind of
mm,
formal religious spirituality, and
mm,
I think it's probably very easy um to if there are institutions that can answer your deepest questions and you trust them, I think that
mm,
probably makes some things in life a bit easier.
mm.
Um, just if your existential woes can be assuaged by um, someone in the House of Lords, right? I don't. It's very different, from trying to get that from internal or just thinking and reading and paying attention to the wider world. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do think I think there are reasons why religions exist. I think they are helpful for people.
Mm.
Um, but yes, I think the need to have faith um, is not something that's ever appealed to me enough. I think for me, the things that one would lose um, would would not be better than the things that one would gain. But adherents of religions would almost certainly argue against that. People who like their religions love their religions, and there's very people go all in.
Mm.
People go all in on them. So I think they do give something back for sure.
There definitely seems to be, religions are all the rage in some parts of the world. Um, I don't know that we've had anybody like particularly strongly religious on the podcast. It's yeah, there. I mean, I've never been like the whole idea of faith confuses me. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't really. I'm not sure that anything exists, even myself. It's weird, but yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, thank you so much for being available so late. It's been a fantastic conversation. I think we've got to that time, which is, like our one listener, Dan. He's still with us. He's the, we're speaking just to you, Dan. This is all about you. There's a Dan. If you wanted, like, what the question now, of course, for Scott is, if Dan wants to come and see you live or follow you on social media or follow you home, where does he go? What does he do?
Um, Well, I'm on social media at Scott Manley Hadley, on most of them, I think, at this point. My blog is triumphofthenow.com. Do look that up. And I've got work in progress shows coming up at the Brighton Fringe, and some other fringes that have not yet been announced, so I can't say that. But my show is called Bold Personality Disorder.
Brilliant.
Please do come and see it.
Fantastic. We'll get all that in the show notes. I'm thinking like, my brain is going like Scotty. I don't know if anybody calls you Scotty, but Scotty Manley Hadley. It's like truly madly deeply. It feels like there's a kind of there's something going on there. Oh, it's exciting. What a great name. Well, thanks everyone, particularly Dan, just you. There are other listeners. We care about you, Dan. And remember, you can help support comedians or technology people and drugs by going to our Facebook group and commenting or asking questions there, or on Spotify. Please do follow us on Spotify. Apparently, my Spotify aliens that are in my mind are telling me that if we can get more people following the show, then we can go up the rankings and the algorithm. Gets us out into more people's ears. Like, because Dan, you want more people to be your friend listeners. Anyway, we really look forward to being in your ears again soon. Last word to our fantastic guest, Scott Manley Hadley.
I completely forgot to make notes for myself on what to contribute to the last word. Um, but I suppose that's I don't feel uncomfortable in this moment, and I think that's the important thing is is gaining the confidence and the comfort to be confused, a bit out of your depth, and sleepy, and not feel bad about it.